What if the exact reason you failed your last major diet or, lifestyle change wasn't actually a lack of willpower?
Right, which is what we always blame it on.
Exactly. But what if the reason you failed was simply the fact that you told your friends you were doing it?
It sounds totally backward.
It really does.
Yeah.
It goes
Yeah.
against literally everything we're taught about, like accountability and setting goals.
Oh, absolutely.
But the stack of behavioral psychology and neuroscience research we are looking at today for this deep dive suggests exactly that.
Yeah, and we've all been there, right?
Oh, 100%. Like, picture this. It's a Sunday night, you're sitting on your couch, you're scrolling through social media, and suddenly you are just hit with this hyper-edited montage video.
Oh, yeah, the really intense ones.
Right. There's pumping music, there's sweat flying everywhere in slow motion.
Someone is screaming at a camera at like 4:30 in the morning.
Yes. Screaming about, grinding while your enemies sleep or whatever.
It's exhausting just watching it.
It is. But we get sold this idea that transformation has to be this massive shock and awe campaign. Like you have to just completely overhaul your entire existence overnight.
Flip the table on your old life.
Exactly. You announce it to the world, and then somehow you're supposed to emerge 30 days later as this entirely different, perfectly optimized human being.
It's the allure of the dramatic reveal. I mean, it's incredibly seductive.
It really is.
We inherently love a good before and after story, I think, because it's comforting.
Also.
Well, it tricks us into believing that our really deep, complex, years-long struggles can just be resolved with one massive cinematic explosion of willpower.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
We like things to be visible, we like them to be fast, and we definitely want them to be celebrated.
So true.
And the modern wellness industry has essentially, they've commodified this human desire, right? They've turned health into a public performance.
Right.
But as the research we are diving into today shows, that public performance is actually actively short-circuiting our biology.
Which brings us perfectly to the core mission of today's deep dive.
Let's hear it.
So, if you are tired of that exhausting cycle, getting super hyped up, going all in, buying all the expensive gear, announcing it to your whole social circle.
And then completely burning out 3 weeks later.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you are sick of that, we are going to tear down that loud, flashy myth today.
It is definitely a myth.
We're pulling from some incredible sources to explore a radical, totally countercultural approach to well-being. And we're going to break this down across 3 distinct layers.
Which I think is a super helpful framework for you listening.
Definitely. We're going to look at the reality of what's actually going wrong in our brains. Then the agency we have to fix it using quiet, almost boring systems.
I love the boring system.
Same. And finally, the possibility of what your life can actually look like 6 months down the road if you act consistently.
Not 30 days, 6 months.
Exactly. We're aiming for clear-eyed optimism here. Better decisions, better systems, a better future.
And the central thesis driving all of this is actually profoundly simple. True change is quiet.
True change is quiet. I love that.
It really is a complete paradigm shift, you know?
Yeah.
We're moving away from transformation as this, social currency where we're just seeking validation from others.
All right, chasing likes.
Exactly. And instead, we're looking at the hard, unglamorous, but ultimately liberating reality of how the human body and brain actually adapt over time.
So moving from external applause to internal self-trust.
Yes. That transition is where the actual physiological magic happens.
Okay, so let's start with that first layer, the reality layer.
Let's do it.
Because we need to diagnose exactly what is going wrong with this modern approach to habit formation.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, something is deeply, deeply broken.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we have more access to fitness apps, fancy biometric data, motivational content than at any point in human history.
Right. The tools are everywhere.
But metabolically and psychologically, we are struggling more than ever.
It's a huge paradox.
It is. And our sources point directly at this reliance on grand spectacles, the highlight reel.
A montage.
Right. I kind of liken it to deciding you want to run a marathon. So you step up to the starting line and you just sprint the first mile at an absolute breakneck pace.
Which is a terrible idea.
Right. But if someone is filming you for TikTok during that first mile, you look amazing. You look like an elite athlete. It's a fantastic content.
But it completely ignores the physiological reality of the 25 miles that are coming next.
Exactly. You just can't sprint a marathon because human willpower is a highly finite resource.
That is a perfect analogy. It really highlights the mismatch between our intentions and biological reality.
Yeah.
When we consume that intense, loud media, our brains internalize this really toxic narrative.
Which is what?
Basically, that if we aren't suffering visible, like, if we aren't pouring sweat and operating at our absolute maximum intensity every single day, then we just aren't making real progress.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the no pain, no gain thing on steroids.
Exactly. The industry brands health as this 30-day extreme challenge. But the fundamental truth, and this is heavily grounded in behavioral psychology, is that willpower depletes.
It runs out.
It runs out fast. It's tightly linked to your cognitive load, your blood sugar, your stress levels, and your sleep quality.
So you're drawing from a very small battery.
A tiny battery.
And that finite battery leads us to a phenomenon the sources specifically identify, which I found so painfully relatable. They call it the Thursday afternoon crash.
Oh, the Thursday crash is so real.
Let's paint a picture of this for everyone, because I think every single person listening has experienced this exact thing.
Definitely.
Okay, so you start your new hyper-restrictive diet and your intense workout plan on a Monday.
Right, armed with that artificial manic Sunday night energy.
Exactly. Tuesday, you grit your teeth and you push through.
Still going strong.
Wednesday, you're maybe secretly starting to negotiate with yourself a little bit.
It's just a little bit.
But then comes Thursday afternoon, real life gets messy.
Always does.
Right. It's pouring rain. Your boss sends this highly stressful, kind of passive-aggressive email at like 3:37 p.m.
Oh, the worst.
Your kid's school calls,
Yeah.
or maybe your car needs a $500 unexpected repair.
So your cortisol just spikes.
Cortisol spikes, your willpower battery drops to absolute zero, and that fake Sunday energy completely evaporates.
Literally gone.
You walk into the kitchen, you see a box of processed cookies on the counter, and those extreme restrictions you set on Monday suddenly just feel like an impossible joke.
And, the critical part of the Thursday crash isn't just that you ate a cookie.
Right.
It's the psychological cascade that happens right after.
The guilt trip.
Exactly. When that crash occurs, you don't just gently pause your new routine and say, okay, well, that was a stressful day. I'll just resume tomorrow.
No, you crash hard.
You crash so hard, you feel defeated, you feel overwhelmed, totally disconnected. And worse than that, you blame your own character.
Yes. You tell yourself, I'm just weak. I lack discipline. I don't have what it takes.
But the failure wasn't a moral failing at all.
What was it then?
The failure was in the architectural design of the system you adopted.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, you were relying on a highly finite resource to sustain an extreme behavioral shift right in the middle of a complex, unpredictable life.
It was doomed from the start.
Exactly. Both biology and psychology tell us that this extreme, loud approach is hardwired to fail the second it hits the friction of the real world.
Which brings us back to that really provocative question I asked right at the top of the show.
About telling your friends.
Right. We've established the physical crash, but there is this massive psychological trap that makes it even worse. The trap of external validation and loud change.
This is huge.
We live in an era where literally the absolute first thing we do when we decide to change our lives is announce it.
Yep, a big post.
We post that day 1 of 75 selfie. We write the super long new me caption. We tell all our coworkers about the new intense fasting protocol we're trying.
We actively seek an audience.
Yes. Why is that so destructive?
Well, it comes down to how our neurochemistry interacts with social dynamics.
Okay, lay some science on us.
Social psychologists have studied this deeply, and they refer to it as the social reality effect.
Social reality effect.
Right. When you declare an intention publicly and your peers react positively they like your post, they comment things like, you've got this, they applaud your ambition.
Which feels great.
It feels amazing. Your brain experiences a very real neurochemical response. You get this massive surge of a dopamine and a hit of profound satisfaction.
Okay.
But here is the really dangerous mechanism at play. Your brain actually registers that satisfaction as if you have already completed the hard work.
Wait, okay, I really need to push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
Because this flies in the face of literally everything the self-help industry tells us.
It really does.
Aren't we constantly told that accountability is the holy grail? Like, that we absolutely have to tell our friends our goals so they can hold our feet to the fire?
It is a very common misconception, and we have to make a vital distinction here. Okay.
The sources draw a hard line between genuine support and an audience.
Support versus audience. Got it.
Right. There is immense scientifically backed value in support that actually helps you execute the behavior.
Like what?
Like a doctor giving you a specific medical protocol. or a quiet training partner who is physically standing outside your house at 6 a.m. to go for a run with you.
Or therapists, maybe.
Exactly. A therapist who helps you unpack the emotional triggers behind why you stress eat. That is functional support.
That makes sense.
But an audience on social media, or just a wide circle of acquaintances that you are essentially performing for, that functions entirely differently.
Because they aren't actually helping you do the work.
Right. An audience often lets you skip the work because they give you the emotional payoff up front.
Oh, wow. So by announcing your goal loudly, you're essentially borrowing the reward before you've actually earned it.
Yes.
You're cashing the emotional check before you do the job. Exactly. You cash it early. The brain has already received its neurochemical reward, the praise, the validation, that great feeling of identity elevation.
So satisfied.
So satisfied. So it quietly turns down the dial on your drive to actually follow through when the physical work gets difficult.
The premature praise becomes the finish line.
It really does. When that messy Thursday afternoon rolls around and you have to do the hard, unseen work like going for a walk in the freezing rain or cooking a whole food meal when you're exhausted.
Your brain completely lacks the drive to do it.
Because why would it expend the energy? It already got the applause on Monday.
That completely reframes the whole concept of setting a goal for me.
It's eye-opening.
If the praise is the finish line, it makes perfect sense why loud change burns really bright and then fades incredibly fast.
Because the initial high wears off.
Right. Because if you remove the audience, like if absolutely nobody knows what you're doing, the only possible way to get that dopamine reward, the only way to feel that sense of accomplishment, is to actually execute the physical behavior.
Exactly. The friction of doing it in private is the exact mechanism that forces the behavior to become real instead of just a digital performance.
Wow.
When you commit to quiet change, there is no early reward to cash in. You are completely alone with your choices.
Which is scary, but also kind of freeing.
It is, and as the source material beautifully puts it, that is the exact soil where personal character actually grows.
Because nobody's watching.
Right. It is you alone choosing the harder thing when literally nobody is looking and nobody would ever know if you didn't do it.
That internal satisfaction isn't a consolation prize for not going viral.
Not at all.
It is the fundamental biological mechanism of lasting behavioral change.
You nailed it.
Okay, so if the psychological trap of public applause is short-circuiting our goals, what happens when we actually look at the physical brain?
Let's get into the biology.
This leads us beautifully into the agency layer. If the loud approach is a trap, how do we actually build health and habits that stick?
We have to shift our focus.
Right, we need to transition from that psychological trap of validation to the physical, biological reality of how our bodies and brains actually adapt.
And this starts with what the source calls respecting the biological timeline.
I really want to dig into this. What does that mean?
This is a crucial concept for you listening to internalize, especially if you want to escape that 30-day challenge mindset.
A quick fix.
Right. We have to look at the anatomy of how our bodies actually change. Think about how a human body transitions from a state of natural vitality into feeling, say, heavy or chronically inflamed, tired, or just unfamiliar to the person living in it.
We tend to view this through a lens of sudden panic, don't we?
We really do. We catch our reflection in a window, or we see a photo from a party and we think it happened overnight.
But you didn't wake up one morning and suddenly lose your metabolic health.
Right. It's not from eating one bad meal.
It's the aggregate of thousands of tiny, almost invisible daily decisions.
It happens so quietly, over 5, 10, or even 20 years.
Just flying under the radar.
Exactly. It's the highly processed snacks you grabbed under stress back in 2018.
Oh man, calling me out.
It's the late-night blue light screen scrolling that disrupted your deep sleep and circadian rhythm for an entire decade.
Right.
It's the gradual modern lifestyle shift that slowly replaces natural daily movement with sitting in cars, sitting at desks, and sitting on couches.
These choices were extremely quiet. They didn't make headlines in your life.
But they accumulated in your tissues.
The source poses a profound logical argument here that honestly just stopped me in my tracks.
What was it?
It said, if your body adapted to those small, quiet choices over an extended 10-year timeline, then the path back to health absolutely must respect that exact same biological timeline.
It is basic biological common sense when you really think about it.
You cannot undo a decade of aggregate microscopic choices with a 30-day explosive shock to the system.
No, you can't. Sustainable health isn't built on a revolutionary explosion.
What is it built on?
It's built on a series of small, repeatable decisions that just run in the opposite direction.
I love that.
Your body is a living, breathing, constantly regenerating project. Every single cell inside you is turning over, rebuilding, and renewing based on the physical materials and the behavioral data you provide it today.
So it's never too late.
Never. Your liver, your muscles, your metabolic pathways, they do not hold a grudge about what you did in your 20s.
Thank goodness for that.
Right. Biology only responds to what you do next.
I really want to highlight that phrase for the listener. Biology only responds to what you do next.
It's so freeing.
It takes all the moral weight and that heavy guilt totally out of the equation.
Exactly.
So if we are respecting this biological timeline, we have to look at the hard neuroscience of habit formation.
This is where it gets really cool.
I was reading the neurology section of our sources, and it totally reframed habits for me.
How did you used to think about them?
Well, I always thought a habit was basically just software, like a computer program running in the background of my mind.
Right, just a mental pattern.
Exactly. But the text talks about something called myelin, and it argues that habits aren't just software at all. They are actual physical hardware built inside the skull.
Yep.
How does that physically work?
I'm so glad you brought that up, because this is where the hard science thoroughly validates the concept of quiet, boring consistency over loud motivation.
Okay, break it down for us.
Habit researchers understand that behavior change runs through a specific neurological loop. It's a cue, a routine, and a reward.
Cue, routine, reward.
Right. Every single time you execute that loop, so let's say your cue is feeling stressed after work.
Typical Tuesday.
Your routine is going for a brisk 10-minute walk instead of pouring a glass of wine.
Right.
And your reward is feeling your heart rate settle. Every time you do that, your brain takes notice.
And it does something physical.
Very physical.
Sure.
It utilizes these specialized cells called oligodendrocytes to build insulation around the specific neural pathway involved in that exact behavior.
Insulation.
Yes, and this insulating substance is called myelin.
So if I'm picturing this right, myelin is literally like the rubber coating around an electrical wire in my house.
That is the exact perfect analogy.
Really?
Yes. The thicker the rubber myelin sheath around a neural pathway, the faster, stronger, and more efficiently the electrical signal travels from point A to point B.
Wow.
So by repeating a behavior quietly, day after day after day, you are literally laying down physical infrastructure in your brain.
You are thickening the myelin.
Exactly. And this makes the behavior increasingly automatic, requiring less and less conscious willpower over time.
Because the wire is so well insulated.
Right. The signal travels so fast, it actually bypasses the part of your brain that debates whether or not to do it.
You just do it.
Yes, this is not a self-help metaphor. It is physical construction happening at a microscopic level inside your skull.
That is wild. And as we all know, you do not build major physical infrastructure over a weekend.
Definitely not.
You don't build a bridge in 3 days. Which brings us to debunking one of the most persistent, annoying myths in the entire wellness industry.
Oh, I know exactly which one you mean.
The idea that it takes 21 days to form a habit.
It's everywhere.
You see it on book covers, it's in corporate wellness seminars, fitness influencers preach it constantly. Where did that even come from, and what is the actual truth?
The 21-day myth is so pervasive, it actually largely stems from a misinterpretation of a plastic surgeon back in the 1960s.
Wait, a plastic surgeon?
Yeah, he noticed it took his patients about 21 days to get used to seeing their new faces in the mirror.
You're kidding.
Nope. And somehow, society just extrapolated that one observation into a universal law of behavioral psychology.
That is absurd.
It really is. And the modern data completely shatters it. The sources cite a highly rigorous, widely referenced study out of University College London.
UCL, right?
Yeah. Researchers tracked individuals who were trying to form new daily habits ranging from drinking water at lunch to running for 15 minutes before dinner, and they measured how long it took for the behaviors to reach peak automaticity.
To get fully myelinated, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And the researchers found that the average time it took was actually well over 2 months.
Wow.
It was about 66 days on average.
66 days is a far cry from 21. But the upper limit was even more shocking to me.
Yes, for some people, depending on the complexity of the habit and their individual environment, it took past 250 days.
250 days.
Yep.
That is over 8 months of consistent daily repetition just to make a habit feel somewhat automatic.
Right. Definitely not a 30-day challenge.
Not at all.
And here is the truly profound insight from that UCL study. The people who successfully formed lasting habits weren't the ones who had the most explosive, hypermanic willpower on day one.
The ones posting the loud selfies.
Right. In fact, day one enthusiasm was a really poor predictor of long-term success.
That is so counterintuitive, but it makes sense.
The successful individuals were simply the ones who kept showing up quietly long after the initial motivation wore off on day 40, day 90, day 150.
I love how this shifts our view of motivation.
It's a game changer.
In popular culture, we are basically taught to treat motivation like it's the actual fuel for our journey.
Like gas in a car.
Right. We wait around for it. We say, oh, I'll start getting healthy when I feel motivated. But if this 250-day timeline is true, motivation is just a spark.
Just a spark.
It's the turn of the ignition key.
Yeah.
And a spark is great for starting the engine, sure, but you cannot run a car across the country on just sparks.
You'd stall immediately.
Exactly. You need an underlying system, like a heavy, boring engine block running under the hood to get you to day 200 and beyond.
That's a brilliant way to conceptualize it. Motivation is a highly volatile, completely unreliable emotion.
So true.
I mean, it's tied to your blood sugar, how well you slept last night, whether it's sunny or raining outside, and what mood your boss is in.
It fluctuates by the hour.
It does. You absolutely cannot anchor a decades-long health strategy to something as fleeting as motivation.
So what gets you there?
What gets you to day 250 is a system running completely underneath the radar of how you happen to feel on any given Tuesday morning.
Okay, so that brings us to the most practical part of the agency layer.
The systems.
Right. We've talked about the theory of brain infrastructure, myelin, and that daunting 250-day timeline. But how do we actually implement this quiet change in our chaotic, messy lives?
We need actionable steps.
Exactly. How do we build that engine block? The sources provide a highly specific, actionable framework of quiet daily choices. These are the repeatable systems that run under the radar.
The boring but beautiful habits.
Yes. Let's start with the first one, which the sources call the pantry rule.
The pantry rule is honestly a masterclass in applying behavioral economics to our daily nutrition.
How does it work?
The fundamental concept is about deciding to win the battle at the grocery store, rather than fighting your own exhausted willpower at 10:00 p.m. in your kitchen.
This makes so much sense because at 10:00 p.m., after a long day of making decisions at work and managing a household, my willpower is effectively zero.
Everyone's is.
Right. If there is a box of highly engineered, ultra-processed cookies sitting in my pantry, I'm going to eat them.
Oh, absolutely.
It is not a matter of if, but when. It's almost a mathematical certainty.
And you really shouldn't blame yourself for that.
Really?
No. The multinational food industry spends billions of dollars employing food scientists to engineer these products.
To make them addictive.
Yes. They find the exact perfect ratio of salt, sugar, and fat to bypass your natural satiety signals and heavily hijack your brain's reward centers.
A bliss point, right?
Exactly, the bliss point. So relying on sheer mental discipline to stare down those scientifically optimized foods in your own home every single night is just a losing game.
It sounds exhausting.
It causes immense decision fatigue. So the pantry rule dictates that you shift the point of decision to a time when you actually have willpower.
When you're at the store.
Right. You only have to exercise discipline for the 45 minutes you're in the grocery store.
Okay, I see.
The rule is brutally simple. If single ingredient whole foods are what you bring home, that is exactly what you will eat when you're tired.
Because that's all that's there.
Exactly. You curate your physical environment so that the default lazy choice at 10:00 p.m. is actually a healthy one.
You're making the right action easier by simply removing the wrong action from the environment entirely.
Structural.
I love that. So the pantry rule handles the nighttime cravings in the grocery shopping. But what about the daytime?
Daytime is critical.
The next systemic habit the source highlights is called the fluid shift. And I have to say, this one sounds almost too simple to be effective. But the biological impact described here is massive.
It really is.
It's about swapping out that sugary corporate coffee for pure water. Why is this such a big deal?
Well, the source uses a remarkably accurate phrase here. They call the typical sugary corporate coffee a 1,000-calorie milkshake in disguise.
Which, when you look at the ingredients, it basically is.
And biologically, if we look at the mechanisms, that is exactly how the body processes it.
What happens when we drink one?
When you consume that much liquid sugar, often combined with processed dairy and artificial syrups first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, or during a mid-afternoon slump, you are initiating a massive glycemic event.
A glycemic event. Walk us through what is actually happening in the bloodstream during that.
Okay, imagine your bloodstream as a highway.
Okay, a highway.
The liquid sugar dumps onto the highway instantly, causing a massive traffic jam of glucose.
Sounds bad.
Your pancreas panics at this spike, so it pumps out insulin. You can think of insulin as a frantic bouncer at a nightclub.
Okay, I like this bouncer analogy.
Right, and its job is to shove all that sugar off the highway and into your cells as fast as biologically possible to clear the blood.
Because too much sugar in the blood is toxic.
Exactly. But because the spike from the liquid sugar was so violent, the bouncer overcompensates.
Oh, he kicks everyone out.
Yes, it clears out way too much sugar. Suddenly, the highway is completely empty of glucose.
And that's the crash.
That is the steep blood sugar crash you feel 2 hours later.
That's that 2:00 p.m. feeling, where you're shaky, you're irritable, you can't focus on your email.
And you desperately crave more sugar just to feel normal again.
Precisely. It's a vicious cycle of spiking and crashing that drives chronic neuroinflammation.
Now, nobody is going to applaud you when you quietly choose water instead.
Right. There is no confetti when you order black coffee or just drink a cold glass of water.
No one cares.
But that quiet choice, repeated over hundreds of days, fundamentally stabilizes your entire metabolic environment.
You stop the bouncer from panicking.
You keep the highway flowing smoothly.
Exactly. It prevents the inflammatory cascade and gets you off the energy roller coaster.
I really love the phrase the sources use for this. These are the small hinges that swing massive metabolic doors.
It's perfect.
Which leads us perfectly into the next system, focusing on movement. This one is called the 15-minute mandate.
This is one of my favorites.
It's all about rejecting the psychological trap that says if you don't have a full hour to suffer and sweat at the gym, then your day is a waste. You might as well just sit on the couch.
It's the all-or-nothing fallacy. And it is arguably one of the most destructive mentalities in human habit formation.
Because it gives you an excuse to do nothing.
Right. If you genuinely believe a workout only counts if it is 60 minutes of high-intensity interval training, then on those messy Thursdays when you only have 20 spare minutes, you will inevitably choose 0 minutes.
Let me play devil's advocate here, though.
Go for it.
I can hear the listener thinking, is a 15-minute walk around my neighborhood actually going to change my life? Or is this just a cute psychological trick to make me feel productive?
The thing that feels too easy.
Right, like if I've only walked for 15 minutes, I'm barely burning any calories.
It's absolutely not a psychological trick. It is hard, verifiable biology.
Okay, explain.
We are conditioned to view exercise only through the lens of caloric burn, which is highly, highly misleading. While 15 minutes might seem physically insignificant compared to an hour of heavy weightlifting, the biological reality of a 15-minute walk, especially if done right after a meal, is profound.
What does it actually do?
It physically moves your blood. It utilizes that ambient glucose floating in your bloodstream that we just talked about.
Clearing the highway.
Yes, and it alters your insulin sensitivity. It sends a mechanical signal to your skeletal muscle tissue that it needs to remain metabolically active.
So it's keeping the engine running.
Exactly. But beyond the immediate physiological response, the most critical factor is the psychological momentum.
The momentum, it makes me think of a video game.
How so?
The 15-minute mandate is like hitting a save game checkpoint.
Oh, I like that.
You might not have beaten the final boss today, you didn't conquer the whole level, but you didn't lose your progress and get sent all the way back to the start. You kept the chain alive.
That is a great way to look at it. A 15-minute walk is infinitely better than 0 minutes because it keeps the neurological habit loop alive.
You're still firing that pathway.
You are still thickening the myelin we talked about earlier.
Right.
You are continually casting a vote for the identity of someone who moves their body daily, regardless of the circumstances.
So if you do 15 minutes, the habit survives the messy Thursday.
And if you do 0, the myelin begins to degrade.
Okay, so we have these incredibly sturdy structural habits.
Okay.
We've got the pantry rule, the fluid shift, the 15-minute mandate.
It's core systems.
But the sources also provide highly specific tactical methods for keeping this progress strictly private.
Which is the whole key to this.
Exactly. Because as we established in part 1, the moment we make our goals a public performance, we risk triggering that dopamine social reality effect and sabotaging our own drive.
We lose the engine.
Right. So how do we practically operationalize this privacy in a world that literally begs us to share everything?
The first and most vital method the source suggests is changing how you track your progress.
Right.
You track it in a place where absolutely no one else can see it.
So no more screenshots of the Apple Watch rings posted to Instagram stories.
No.
No more Strava running maps shared to Facebook.
Correct. You go dark.
Go dark.
Use a private notes app on your phone, or a physical paper journal on your nightstand, or a habit tracking app that has the social sharing features permanently disabled.
It's just for you.
Exactly. The crucial mindset shift here is understanding the true purpose of the data.
Which is?
You are collecting data strictly to adjust your own systems. You are tracking to see if the pantry rule is working or if you need to adjust your sleep schedule.
You're figuring out what works for your biology.
Yes. You are acting like a scientist in a closed laboratory. You are not collecting data for an audience to validate you.
The data is a tool to tune the engine, not a trophy to put on the shelf.
That's exactly it.
I really like that framing.
Yeah.
And the second privacy method the sources mentioned is directly tied to what we just talked about with the 15-minute mandate. It's about setting the bar absurdly low on hard days.
This is a vital survival mechanism for long-term quiet change.
Why absurdly low, though?
Because on a bad day, say you're getting over a cold, you are exhausted from traveling, or the world is generally chaotic, the goal is no longer optimal progress.
The goal shrinks down.
It shrinks down to simply not breaking the chain.
Literally just doing one push-up.
One push-up.
Or drinking one glass of water instead of a soda at lunch. Or doing a 5-minute stretch on the living room rug.
Exactly. Because continuity beats intensity every single time over a long enough horizon.
That's hard for people to accept, though.
It is. A lot of people fail because they let their ego get involved. They feel silly just doing one push-up.
Like it doesn't count.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you keep the bar absurdly low, you protect the neurological infrastructure you have spent months building.
You defend the myelin.
You defend the myelin.
I love that. The third method for building quiet agency is one that I think is an absolute game changer for daily friction.
Which one is that?
Separate the decision from the mood.
Oh, this is a brilliant strategy for conserving that finite willpower battery.
Walk us through it.
As we discussed, willpower aggressively depletes throughout the day. If you wake up every single morning and have an internal debate with yourself, should I work out today? Am I too tired? Is it too cold outside? Should I just sleep in?
I have that debate literally every morning.
Right. And when you do that, you are spending precious cognitive energy relitigating a choice you supposedly already made.
You're draining the battery before you even get out of bed.
Exactly. The method here is to decide once in advance in a cool, rational state. You tell yourself, I am a person who trains at 6:30 a.m. on weekdays, period.
It becomes a standing appointment with yourself, not a daily negotiation.
Exactly.
You completely remove the emotion from the logistics.
Yeah.
You don't ask yourself if you feel like doing it. Just like you don't ask yourself if you feel like brushing your teeth.
You just do it.
You just do it. And the final tactical method for keeping things private is how you review your overall progress. The source strongly advocates for private monthly reviews.
Yes.
Yeah.
Instead of obsessing over the biometric scale every single morning and letting it ruin your mood,
Which we all do.
or reporting your daily macronutrients to a Facebook group every night to get head pats, you schedule a quiet, private check-in with yourself just once a month.
Once a month.
Sit down with a cup of coffee, open your private journal, and honestly evaluate.
What are you asking yourself?
What worked over the last 30 days? What didn't work? Where did my systems break down on Thursdays? And then you just adjust the system and repeat.
New drama.
None. This fosters a profound level of self-adjustment and internal self-reliance that daily public tracking completely destroys.
Because you are actively managing your own life rather than acting like a performer waiting for a review from the critics.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've thoroughly established the reality of what's wrong, and we have built this incredible fortress of agency with these quiet, repeatable systems and private tracking methods.
The foundation is laid.
Right. Now, I want to move into part 4, the possibility layer. This is the horizon line for everyone listening.
This is the fun part.
Because we are not just doing this to be boring, stoic, and quiet for the sake of it, right? We are doing this to radically transform our lived experience.
Absolutely.
What is the actual biological payoff if a listener commits to these quiet systems? The pantry rule, the fluid shift, the 15-minute mandate, not just for a 30-day blitz, but for 6 uninterrupted months.
What a year.
Right. What does 180 days of quiet consistency actually look like on a cellular and psychological level.
The sources paint a deeply optimistic and rigorously scientifically grounded picture of this 6-month horizon.
And it's not just hype.
It's not hyperbole at all, it's physiology. Let's break it down by the specific areas of life that undergo this quiet transformation. Let's start with the psychological aspect, your mindset.
Yes, because the mental shift seems to necessarily precede the physical shift. The source talks at length about how your relationship with data changes, specifically your relationship with the bathroom scale.
It's a beautiful transition, honestly. When you step away from the manic panic of the 30-day blitz, your deep anxiety surrounding measurement begins to evaporate.
Why is that?
Because you aren't rushing to post a before and after picture in 4 weeks. You start viewing the scale as just a piece of objective, boring data.
Right.
The source uses a great metaphor. You treat it like a thermometer rather than a moral judge of your human worth.
If the thermometer says it's cold outside, you just put on a sweater.
Exactly.
You don't hate yourself for the weather. You don't cry about the temperature. You just adapt.
Exactly. In the same way, over 6 months, you become deeply patient and grounded. You start taking authentic, quiet pride in the small daily execution of your systems, rather than stressing over a 2-pound water weight fluctuation on a random Tuesday morning.
The data loses its emotional sting.
It just becomes information.
Like a thermometer rather than a moral judge of your human worth. That mental shift alone is worth the price of admission today, honestly.
It frees up so much mental energy.
So the mindset stabilizes beautifully. What about the physical experience? What happens to a person's daily energy levels after 6 months of this?
This is where the biological compound interest really starts paying massive dividends.
Okay, tell us about the dividends.
Over 180 days of executing the pantry rule and the fluid shift, meaning you have consistently replaced those multi-ingredient, ultra-processed corporate items with simple, single-ingredient whole foods and water. You profoundly change your neurochemistry and your metabolic function.
The source specifically mentions the daily brain fog finally clearing up. And I know so many people who think brain fog is just a natural part of getting older.
It's not just age. It's often a direct symptom of chronic neuroinflammation and those wild blood sugar fluctuations we talked about with the insulin bouncer.
The spikes and crashes.
Right.
Why?
By stabilizing your inputs for 6 months, you trade those extreme spikes and crashes for steady, reliable, baseline cognitive energy.
That sounds amazing.
You aren't desperately reaching for a massive caffeine hit at 3:00 p.m. just to keep your eyes open during a meeting.
Because your body is actually functioning properly.
Yes. Your body actually learns metabolic flexibility. It becomes highly efficient at utilizing its own stored energy rather than demanding constant hits of external sugar.
And inevitably, this profound internal cellular shift starts to reflect externally.
Always does.
The source touches on your appearance, but it does so in a way that is totally separate from the superficial influencer aesthetic we talked about earlier. It talks heavily about systemic inflammation. Let's dig into the biology of that.
Right. When you drastically reduce systemic inflammation, which in modern diets is primarily driven by excess processed sugars, highly refined carbohydrates, and industrial seed oils.
What stuff in the pantry we got rid of.
Exactly. When you reduce that, your immune system stops operating in a constant state of low-grade alarm.
It can finally relax.
Yes. These processed foods trigger cytokines, which are inflammatory markers, to flood the body. When you remove the trigger for 6 months, the alarm turns off.
And you can see that.
You see this visibly in the mirror. The skin clears up and regains elasticity, systemic puffiness and water retention in the face, and joints drop significantly, and a natural biological vitality returns from the inside out.
You just look healthier.
It is the visible outward result of deep internal healing. You literally look like a healthier animal.
I love that. And finally, in this 6-month transformation horizon, there is your functional fit. Which brings us right back to the power of that 15-minute mandate, or taking a 20 to 30-minute daily walk.
The movement system.
If someone actually walks every day for 6 months, what physically changes?
Committing to that simple daily cardiovascular output for half a year completely rewires your systemic infrastructure.
Wow.
It continuously resets your insulin sensitivity at the cellular level.
Which means what, practically?
This means your body becomes highly efficient at shuttling nutrients directly into muscle tissue to be used as fuel, rather than shuttling them into fat cells for storage.
Oh, that is a huge shift.
It is. It strengthens the entire cardiovascular network, builds capillary density, and naturally transforms your active metabolism. You essentially build an internal engine that runs much hotter, cleaner, and more efficiently.
This brings up an observation from the source text that I think is so deeply relatable for you listening, and it serves as a perfect contrast to the loud, performative fitness culture we started the show critiquing.
What's the observation?
The source explicitly says, we aren't training to look like a fitness influencer whose full-time corporate job is to live in a gym and sell supplements.
It is a critical reality check that we desperately need.
Totally.
As a society, we have dangerously conflated the extreme aesthetics of fitness modeling, which often involves severe dehydration and unhealthy practices, by the way, with the biological baseline of normal human health.
They are not the same thing.
They are absolutely not the same thing.
Right. Like, I am not trying to get shredded so I can sell detox tea on Instagram. I have a real job. I have a family. I have a mortgage.
You're training for your actual life.
The real goal, as the text beautifully lays out, is training for real life. We are training so we can carry all the heavy groceries from the car in one trip with complete ease.
The true test of strength.
Yes. We are training so we can move through a highly stressful Tuesday without developing chronic lower back pain. We are training so we can get down on the living room floor to play with our kids and actually get back up without groaning, holding our knees, and needing help.
We are protecting our physical mobility decades down the line.
Exactly.
If we pull back and connect this to the biggest possible picture, what you are really talking about is preserving your fundamental independence.
Independence, that's a strong word.
It is the ability to navigate the physical world completely on your own terms as you age. That is the true biological payoff of quiet consistency.
Not a six-pack.
Right. It is an invaluable long-term investment in your future self's autonomy. You are buying freedom.
Which brings us to the final and perhaps most profound section of our deep dive today, Part 5.
The psychological payoff.
We're still in the possibility layer, but we are looking at the ultimate overarching reward of this entire quiet process. And that reward is self-trust.
This is where it all comes together.
We've talked about the physical benefits, the cleared brain fog, the stabilized blood sugar, the mobility, the lack of joint pain. But the sources argue that the ultimate reward of quiet change isn't actually just a better body.
No, it's not.
It is a completely different psychological relationship with yourself.
What's truly fascinating here is how the physical biology and the psychological state are inextricably linked.
They feed each other.
They do. The overarching theme synthesizing all of these sources is that internal private pride sustains long-term habit formation infinitely better than public applause ever could.
Because it's real.
When you remove the audience, when you stop seeking validation from the crowd, you are left with something made of much stronger material.
The exact phrase the source uses is unimpeachably self-made.
Such a great phrase.
I absolutely love it. When you are the only witness to the 5 a.m. alarms when it is freezing outside.
Right.
When you are the only one on Earth who knows about the junk food meals you didn't eat. When you are the only one who knows about the 15-minute walks in the rain. The resulting version of you is unimpeachably self-made.
No one else can claim it.
Nobody else can take the credit. It wasn't for the gram.
It is a much sturdier, more resilient kind of pride because it isn't rented from anyone else's applause.
You didn't do it for the likes.
You didn't do it for the comments. You did it for your own biology. And this is exactly how you build self-trust.
By keeping promises to yourself.
Every single quiet choice you make, choosing the water over the milkshake, taking the walk when you're tired, prepping the single ingredient meal, is a literal neurological vote for the person you are becoming.
You are accumulating undeniable evidence that you are someone who actually follows through.
Exactly. And this is so crucial because for so many people who have been trapped for years in that exhausting cycle of loud fad diets, 30-day challenges, and immediate burnout, the deepest wound they carry isn't physical. The deepest wound is the loss of self-trust.
Well, that it's hard.
They no longer believe themselves when they look in the mirror and say, I am going to change. The brain says, no, we aren't. We've heard this before.
The brain knows you're lying.
Right. But when you engage in quiet, daily consistency, you rebuild that neurological trust brick by invisible brick.
Because you have the proof.
The deepest satisfaction in life doesn't come from external validation on a screen. It comes from waking up with steady energy, moving your body without restriction, and realizing that you are finally fully in control of your own physical journey. You begin to believe yourself again.
You begin to believe yourself again. That is incredibly powerful. And, crucially, to make this actually work in reality, this process requires a mechanism for when things go wrong.
Because they will go wrong.
Because this isn't about being a flawless robot. Humans are messy. The sources emphasize forgiveness as a highly functional, literally required system.
This is vital for long-term agency. Perfection is a toxic myth that actively derails progress.
How does forgiveness fit into a biological system, though?
Well, if you have a chaotic Thursday afternoon, or a highly stressful, messy week where all your systems completely break down and you eat the cookies and skip the walks,
Which happens to everyone.
the protocol is brilliantly simple. You let go of the guilt instantly.
Instantly. You don't wallow in it.
No.
You don't declare the entire month a catastrophic failure and wait until January 1st to try again.
You forgive yourself exactly like you would forgive a good friend.
That's a good way to frame it.
You look at the bump in the road as simple, objective data feedback. Maybe you were too sleep-deprived. Maybe your pantry rule slipped and you bought the wrong thing. Maybe you were emotionally triggered.
You just assess it.
Right, rather than viewing it as a deep moral failure. As we established earlier, biology does not hold a grudge.
It doesn't remember the cookies from Tuesday.
Your liver doesn't care about what you ate last weekend. It isn't keeping score. It only responds to what you do next.
So you simply let your very next choice be a kind, practical one for your biology.
You do not need to rush. You do not need to overcompensate by starving yourself the next day. You just return to the baseline quiet system.
Okay, this has been an incredibly deep and shifting conversation today. Let's summarize the journey we've taken through these sources for you listening.
It's been a big journey.
We started by diagnosing the reality of the problem. We rejected the loud, flashy willpower training myths of the 30-day modern fitness industry. We saw how the psychological trap of external validation, that social reality dopamine effect, actually short-circuits our brain's ability to execute hard work.
We then move into the agency layer, looking at the hard biological timeline, the fact that aggregate physical decline requires aggregate patient rebuilding.
Right.
We explore the hard neuroscience of the myelin factor, understanding that true habit formation is physical infrastructure built by oligodendrocytes that takes months, often over 250 days, to fully construct.
Motivation is just the spark. Systems are the engine. From there, we armed you with quiet, repeatable systems. The pantry rule, to bypass decision fatigue and win the grocery store battle. The fluid shift to stop the insulin bouncer and stabilize blood sugar. And the 15-minute mandate to act as a save game checkpoint and keep psychological momentum alive on the hardest days.
And we talked about protecting those systems.
Yes, how tracking privately, setting the bar absurdly low on hard days, and conducting quiet monthly reviews protects that progress from the audience effect.
Which leads right to the possibility layer.
Exactly. The 6-month rewards of systemic health, real-world functional fitness, cleared brain fog, and the ultimate overarching prize, unimpeachable self-trust.
A completely new relationship with yourself.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, my friend, what is one final provocative thought you want to leave the listener with to mull over today?
The sources all point toward this beautifully ordinary, quiet reality. And I think it poses a question we rarely ask ourselves in such a hyper-connected, performative world.
Yeah.
Consider this. What if the greatest, most profound achievement of your entire year ends up being something that absolutely no one else knows about?
Wow.
What if the most vital transformation of your entire life is entirely invisible to the world? Never gets a single like or comment, but changes absolutely everything about how you experience being alive.
Man, that is a thought that really stays with you. It completely flips the script on what actually matters.
It really does.
You know, we started this deep dive talking about that feeling of scrolling social media on a Sunday night, looking at those loud cinematic transformations and feeling that overwhelming pressure to overhaul everything overnight.
But you don't need a montage.
You don't need an audience, and you definitely don't need to be flawless.
Yeah.
You just need to respect your biology, keep your quiet promises to yourself, and let the ordinary moments do the heavy lifting.
The days are going to pass anyway.
Might as well make the next quiet choice a good one. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Let's take that next quiet step forward together.